not expected, so if the alarm sounds, please evacuate the building quickly and calmly. Please use the stairs and do not use the lift. On one side of the building, please gather outside the Yorkshire Bank on the opposite side of the road. Exit by the door which you entered the room by. And if you need any assistance, please ask. And I also ensure you all your mobiles are turned off or set to silent, please. And all parts of the meeting will be recorded for future broadcasts. Apologies.
Haven't received any chair, but I believe that Tracy Shepherd may be late or may not attend.
Chair, apologies, I have to leave at 6 o'clock after the engagement.
Move on to the agenda. Signing the minutes of the 9th of September. Can at this point thank Councillor Hancock for stepping into the breach. And members happy for me to sign it as a true copy.
Agreed.
Okay.
Yeah, can I just check an item on there?
Yes, ma'am.
The item 15, it says the chief officer, this CCG is going to report back. Do you know when that will be?
She was supposed to come to this meeting, but she's now hopefully coming in December, and I'm assuming when she comes back she will update you on that, because I haven't heard anything else from her.
Okay, so it will be December, and we need to chase that.
I can make sure that she knows that she's still got that to address when she comes, but as far as I'm aware, it will be December. But she may respond before then, since she's not come tonight.
Move on to declarations of interest. Any member have any additional interest to declare? No? Public consultation. I have two speakers on item 10, so with the members' indulgence, I am going to move item 10 up so that the members of the public actually can leave when they're done. So if there is... So Shirley, you've got an update on the SDP for us first, and then I'll ask you to come up and speak. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. I received an email yesterday from Councillor Barry Longdon, the portfolio holder for health, and he just wanted to advise the panel that the Sustainable Transformation Plan, the STP, is no longer being referred to as the STP. We now are referring to it as Better Health, Better Care, Better Value Programme. Just in case anybody starts trying to look, get confused, looking it up or reading information about it. If you read about Better Health, Better Care, Better Value, it's STP. I don't think, let me just sanitize this a little. After months of trying to get some support to find out what was on the STP programme, Councillor Longdon saying he's still not got very far forward with that. He seems to think that there's not really anybody that he's able to speak to that can advise him about which direction this is going in at the moment. So he feels that maybe the NHS aren't actually wanting local authorities too involved, and that's probably what's causing the the difficulties, if you like, in getting that information. But just to advise you that he is still in pursuit of that, so when we've got anything extra to say, we will.
Chair,
That's it, Chair.
can I, mind if I just say something on that? Because I actually think it's a real disgrace that elected members who represent the community are suffering from the lack of information in regard to that, and we will call it the STP because that's how we recognise it. okay, once we get round all the other long words, we'll maybe learn them. But I'll just make that one point. I think as elected members we should be kept up to date on things. There's obviously things happening.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, we're definitely going to keep calling it the STP, because otherwise we can have it renamed and renamed to cover up the problems we've got. It clearly is going ahead. It's going ahead as several streams, I understand. So it's not one monster. It's like one of these monsters you cut the head off and 4 heads grow. So there's actually 4 or 5 different work streams going on. Some about urgent care, etc. So I think and it was almost a year ago the document was leaked. Wasn't it? It's November, December time last year. So we've had a document sitting there for a year and no public update on where it's going, which is totally unacceptable. Me, and more so my wife, goes to quite a lot of the meetings at the George Eliot and the CCGs, and there clearly is a lot of work going on. I know Izzy Seckham's heading up one of the panels looking at some of this stuff, and for the Borough Council and its health committee to know nothing is totally unacceptable. So we do need the committees, the joint health committees, whatever, to actually bang some drums and get someone down here to tell us what's being proposed.
Members are happy for me to inform Councillor Longdon of, we feel we need somebody certainly to be coming back to this borough, and I will also find out who I need to write to get them to come to this committee to say where we are in the process, etc. But it will be a case of finding out who they are.
Public speaking.
I've got Councillor Margaret.
Thank you, Chair. I echo the comments that other councillors have made, and I'm also going to ask whoever's got strategic oversight for this policy and document. We do need to have them here and have a real discussion, and not just the councillors on this committee, but all of the local authority members who represent the people of Nuneaton and Bedworth. And the people of Nuneaton and Bedworth need to say, no, it's all very well renaming it. And it is interesting, it's now renamed Better Health, Better Care, Better Value. But from where I'm sitting, it doesn't seem anything better about it. Because my understanding is there were significant budget cuts. And I want to know what services they are going to reduce. And we need answers to that now, because people are concerned. So I'd be grateful if you could convey that to the Cabinet member, but we don't need to put it all on the Cabinet member. I would like to see the Chief Executive of this authority write to other stakeholders within the area, including at the County Council and within the Health Authority, to say that people need to come here and speak to us, because we represent local people and they need to come and give us the answers that we desperately need, and it's no longer acceptable. Thank you, Chair.
I'm going to move on to public consultation. Mr John Swift. So if you want to come to the table, the chair there, just in front.
My name's John Swift.
So I've just explained how it works. So you get 3 minutes to speak.
3 minutes?
And then after, the members can ask you points of clarification.
Yes, fine, okay.
Okay, so you please sit down.
Right. In 1948, we were promised a land fit for heroes. And to go some way to meeting the aspirations of those returning from the battlefields in World War II, under the guiding hand of Nye Bevan, we've got the National Health Service. The first ever modern comprehensive health service free at the point of need, a glimpse of socialism. A very dear friend, now deceased, remembered those days after returning from North Africa. He was not slow in informing us of Nye Bevan's warning. We will have a national health service so long as there are people ready to fight for it. And that's why I'm here tonight. The BBC sounds the alarm. On the 30th of October, the BBC reported the number of offshore companies specialising in lending money through private finance initiatives are on a buying spree, encouraged by the government's policies on healthcare. We know PFI agreements triple the overall cost of a hospital, for example. I picked this up when I went to Pearson School Strike Annual Commemoration. It's published by the Norwich Keep Our National Health Service Public. And at that annual commemoration, the longest strike in British history, by the children of teachers in Norfolk, I picked that up. And it's a description of accountable care organisations and sustainability transformation plans, ACOs and STPs, which is jokingly being called better health, better care and better value. After reading it, I felt better informed and rather alarmed. The knowledge handout concludes that accountable care organisations are the proposed US health insurance industry solution to a uniquely US problem. They should have no place in our National Health Service. Since STPs, or whatever we're going to call them, are the vehicles for imposing them, STPs should be opposed in their entirety. The NHS must be reinstated as a fully public service, and this is the most equitable and cost-effective way to provide health care. Does this health OSP agree? Hang on a minute. Lost a bit of paper. Anyway, I'll have to ad-lib the last bit. Finally, in the 11th day of the 11th month of this year, we commemorate the sacrifice by the people who fought in the Second World War. Wouldn't it be fitting, in fact, for us in Nuneaton and Bedworth to commit ourselves to ensure that we're going to rescue the National Health Service, which was the only material reward they had after defeating the Nazis in the Second World War. I plead to you to fight these proposals. They will decimate the National Health Service, the thing that sets us out in England, Scotland and Wales, apart from all the other nations in the world. I don't think I took more than 3 minutes.
It's a little over, but if you just stay there, Mr. Swift, has any of the panel have got any questions to ask you? Points of clarification, any member? No? Mrs. Norma Timmins.
What to say? Okay, just very short. Just basically, I represent Keep Our National Health Service Public group, which we formed a few months ago. And one of the first things we did was joined up with South Warwickshire, and we took a petition to Andy Harding. And basically, it was calling on all the organisations involved in the Coventry and Warwickshire Sustainability and Transformation Plan to publish full details of financial, workforce and site plans, and to let him know that the organisations that we oppose, let the organisations know that we oppose any reduction in our health and social care services. Since these STPs have sort of been brought along, we've been sort of promised from different people that we'll have a full programme of public engagement, that people will be involved, local communities will be able to sort their problems out, that this is going to actually be some kind of panacea, that, well, at least that's how it's promoted anyway. And Theresa May, even yesterday in PMQs, said much the same thing to a Conservative questioner. We took the petition along a couple of months ago. We've had no response. So we've sent a letter. I think that a copy of that letter has been sent out to the council, hasn't it? Is that right?
I've seen it.
Yeah, that's okay. So, but that's just going into more detail, saying we require proper details on financial, site and workforce plans. we just wanted a full programme really. Okay. Basically, and the last thing was actually, can Andy Hardy confirm the information in both the healthcare leader and in the National Health Executive recently that Coventry Warwickshire STP is planning to adopt an accountable care system this autumn or early 2018? What form will this actually take? And who will be leading the operation? And what governance and what accountability? Basically that's it. And really, we're sort of bringing the problem to you and just asking you if you can support us. We want to really make this STP, this problem with the STP, which is still the same thing, whatever you call it. We want to make it more public, more obvious. You know, what it's all been done behind closed doors. We know that, but we need to find ways to bring it out, a public meeting or something like that, and just some feedback from the councillors would be great. You know, as to how we can go on, because it's hard for everybody, and that includes us that are trying to go through documents and trying to work out what's going on as well. So.
Has any member got any points of clarification, Councillor Condicle?
Yeah, you say Andy Hardy's being unresponsive,
Yeah.
Which is appalling. Have you actually gone to the hospital board meetings in Coventry, where obviously he's the chair, and have you put in things like freedom of information requests and things? Because, yeah, you need to be a bit more sort of directly...
Freedom, yeah, okay. No, we haven't actually, as far as I know, none of us have been there. So what is it,
just take it to the hospital boards,
right.
Have board meetings and public
Okay.
meetings, which is a better place to directly raise comments, because he'll have to be there and potentially have to answer questions.
Okay.
Councillor Margaret?
Thank you, Chair. Well, I do agree it would be interesting to attend the hospital board. I worry about Freedom of Information Act request because that costs money. And it can be complex. I think you should do it, but you know, you've got to be wary of that. I think our job as local councillors, Councillor Condacor, is to make sure there's action taken on behalf of local residents. So rather than sending residents to the board, I think we as a committee chair need to get the appropriate people, either from the board or Andy and others, here. And we need to invite you back, because I want to thank Mrs Timms and Mr Swift for coming along this evening to raise this with us, because it's a really important point that people are worried about across our borough. But rather than just say to you, go to a hospital board, yes, by all means do that. But I think we as a committee, and we're going to debate it, but I would hope that we would invite the relevant people here, and that when we do that, we can invite the residents back to have a say to the appropriate people.
Any other member? Thank you very much. Is that it? Okay. Vote for the votes. Any member?
Thank you. It is really important that we put the people making the decisions on the spot. It is all going on behind closed doors. The little bits that come out in public meetings merely point to the fact there's a group meeting or group discussing it. And the key people we do need to have a go at are the Andy Hardys and also the people like Izzy Seckham at the County Council, because a lot of this is joining up health and social care and trying to cut £100 or £200 million out at the same time. So we're not going to get better care out of it, we're going to get cheaper care. It's not like we should say nothing changes, because there is a lot of good stuff we do need to do in integrating care and what goes on in hospitals. But we actually need the public and councillors to take part as stakeholders rather than it being something done to us. And yeah, I don't know how we get Andy Hardy here. I don't know how we get Izzy Seckham and people at the County Council to come out the wall and actually tell us what's going on. And one of the key problems we've got is, as I say, this has been separated into separate processes. So it's not like we had the acute service review 10 years ago, 2006, 2007, and there was a document. This is what we're going to do to your local services. They're not making that mistake this time. They're going to produce a document for this, a document for this. It's going to go through lots of committees. It's going to be fighting on lots of different fronts. But we do need to get more aggressive about it, because if we just say, oh, when you're free, can you come and visit us? That won't work. We need to be, this is important, and we need to get the good bits out of this process and the bad, because it is also wrong to say that all change is bad change. We have the NHS and social care working in silos, and there are big issues.
Member Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Chair. While I agree that we've got to bang the drum, I think actually what we need to do is use our powers as local councillors to take some level of action to get those individuals to come and speak to us. And therefore I would propose that we as a local authority, in accordance with our powers to hear evidence and also our public health and mental health statutory obligations, that we request the attendance of Andy Hardy and Izzy Seckham before this committee to hear more details of the STP or the BHBCBV, and that our chief executive or managing director is now, I forget the changes, but the managing director writes to those individuals and asks them to come and give evidence before this committee, because we have the power to ask for people to come and give evidence. We have some health obligations, and rather than just invite them if they're going to not come or not turn up, I think we need to actually take our obligations very seriously and put it to them that they've got a duty to consult with us and to present this information to us, and for us to be a part of whatever their programme is for the future of healthcare in this borough.
Councillor Edwards.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to make a comment on the change of name. They've also changed the name of the family hubs in the children's centre consultation, going to have a new name of family and children's centres instead of family hubs. And it's just getting a little bit embarrassing, all these changes of names lately. I did notice the other day that 1984 by George Orwell is back in as a top 10 seller again, and I wondered why. And it's all starting to make sense now. We can't just keep going around changing the names of things. It doesn't make it any more palatable.
Members are happy for us to indulge Councillor Margrave's decision. Councillor Hancock.
I am, Chair, but I want some clarification on something, because it's my understanding that the way OSPs are set up, we have no powers to force people to attend. We can only invite them. It isn't like the House of Commons select committees where people have to attend. Yes, I think we have strongly worded invitations to them, and maybe if they choose not to turn up, then we need to respond to that in another manner. But I just wanted to clarify, if that's the case as I understand it, we can only invite, we can't make them turn up.
Chair, just to clarify, I entirely endorse what Councillor Hancock is saying. We can't force people to attend, but we do have duties and there are statutory obligations which we can request evidence, whether people choose to turn up or not. But I think it's very different to inviting them to come and speak. I think we need to put a formal request in saying that we expect them to come. Now, whether they do or not is up to them, but I think really local people deserve better than this.
So obviously I'll sit down with the managing director and we'll discuss ways of wording a letter to be a bit more forceful but polite. Members are happy for that to happen. Yeah?
Agreed.
Moving on to item 6, mental awareness.
Thank you.
Chair, is that item over?
This is, if you can stay for the rest if you like, but if you want to go, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I've been invited here by the Chair to give the meeting an update on some work that we've done working in partnership with the Borough, the County Council, Borough and other organisations to launch a Nuneaton and Bedworth Dementia Action Alliance. So So I wanted to sort of just brief you on that, and just to kind of set the scene very briefly, as I'm sure we all know, dementia cases are increasing across the UK, particularly as the population age rises, as we get an older population. And in Warwickshire, we have 8,190 people, that's according to the observatory figures, living with dementia, and that's projected by 2025 to rise to 11,000. And in terms of Nuneaton and Bedworth, that is 1,660 rising to 2,200 as a projection. But one of the key things coming out is that a more dementia-friendly society is always beneficial to people living with dementia, including carers and their relatives. And there's a lot that can be done to reduce the risk of dementia as well. In relation to a healthier lifestyle, there's a lot that can be done to cut down on the risk. So there is a lot that can be done. Back in sort of February of this year, Borough Council, our team within localities and partnerships, Age UK and the Alzheimer's Society and a few other local groups got together with the aim, we formed a steering group with the aim of putting on a dementia conference, which we did hold at the Bedworth Civic Hall. But the purpose of the conference really was to actually invite people living with dementia to the conference and get an idea from them about what really mattered to them in terms of living with dementia, what really mattered to those individuals, and then take that information away and use that as the core to develop a sort of an action plan. And we also asked people at that conference, which we held on the 18th of May, whether they felt it was a good idea to form a local dementia action alliance that could focus locally on the key issues for the borough itself. Because at the moment we have a Coventry and Warwickshire Dementia Action Alliance, which is a good thing that we've got going for us. But there was a lot of people saying at the conference, supporting the idea of a local alliance that could almost act as a coordinating body and actually improve the way that we handle dementia and improve dementia friendliness in the borough. So we took that away. The steering group remained. We carried on meeting, and we set about putting plans for a Dementia Action Alliance to be formed. And that's what's happened. There's a lot of stuff going on in the county. I found since I got involved in that work, there's so much good stuff going on. It's really hard to keep track of it, really, in terms of what's being offered, by the county, but also what's coming out of community and voluntary groups. Lots and lots of good stuff. And I think we realised that it's very important to try and maximise on all of the resources that are out there and making sure that we're drawing them into Nuneaton and Bedworth, action days and things like that, and we're making the most of it. So that's what we decided to do. So a lot of the things that came out of the conference that I've already touched upon was people said we need to know what services are available locally. We'd like to see more people trained as dementia friends, so that people at large, people who are on the end of a phone when we're inquiring about what's available to us and so on, they have some dementia friends training and understand where we're coming from. They were saying those things to us. They talked about shops, businesses and transport, better awareness, better dementia friendliness from those kind of areas. Issues about access, hostility sometimes and lack of knowledge from some members of the public, and a need for internal audits at particular locations. And some people were quite specific about the locations, like they were mentioning a particular bank, for example, and the carpeting in the bank, and so on, things like that. That's the wrong sort of carpeting that can actually frighten someone who has dementia, So they really got down to some really very local stuff, actually. And so there's a lot of support for the local DAA. Working as a steering group, as a partnership, we've now launched the DAA. That took place on the 6th of October, fully supported by the Alzheimer's Society. They've been with us all the way on this. And local DAAs are becoming more and more popular, certainly in other parts of the country, because they are focusing in on local issues. This is the first one we have in Warwickshire, here in Nuneaton and Bedworth. What we've got is we've got a vision statement which is about making Nuneaton and Bedworth a more dementia-friendly borough. We've got a mission statement, got documents here that I can make available to you. Values, governing document, strategy and an action plan, and also a promotional leaflet there as well. I've bought 10 copies. I can certainly do some more and hopefully I'll give you all a copy of that. So where we are with this at the moment is that we want to recruit members now to the Nuneaton and Bedworth Dementia Action Alliance. The membership will consist of a core steering group, but the important bit is the membership, people that want to join the group and do something to help improve dementia awareness and dementia friendliness in the borough. We're hoping to attract businesses, the private sector, as much as anyone else. So we're really trying to make it as open to the whole community, hoping that people will join in and say, right, I can do that. We've simplified the whole process of joining. The Alzheimer's Society, which is a great organisation, we're obviously fully in line with them, but they were kind of part of their application process is that if you want to join as an organisation, you have to do an action plan beforehand. Well, we've removed that requirement from the local DAA. We've just said, please, if you agree to sign up to our ethics and our principles and our mission, then as far as we're concerned, you can join us. All we ask is that you look at the strategy and the action plan and come up with what you think you can do. Doesn't matter how small it is, but if you can do something, you know, if you're in Asda or if you're in Tesco's or you're in taxis, whatever you know that you can do, rather than ask them to devise an action plan that probably won't be delivered in reality, we're asking for people to say, this is what I know I can deliver, you know, and that way we think we're going to move things on. So the important thing now is to, we've got a web page on the Alzheimer's Society, so we're going to add our members to that. We've got our own sort of logo, which is very much like the DAA logo. We're hoping to get sort of stickers and things like that that we can actually make available to businesses and groups, you know, within Nuneaton and Bedworth. So we want to get it off the ground, and there is a big feeling of enthusiasm from people for this, and lots of good ideas coming through. And the one thing that, you know, we are saying above all is, if it's not actually going to make a difference to people living with dementia, to their lives, then we shouldn't be doing it. You know, we're not going to do stuff that, you know, we're all sitting together talking about stuff. We're actually going to do stuff that will make a difference out there. That's something we took away from the conference in May. So that's probably our golden rule as the Nuneaton and Bedworth DAA, that it's got to make a difference to people, otherwise we're not going to do it. So that's, I could go on a lot more, but obviously time is precious here, Chair. So hopefully that makes sense, and just giving you a bit of an overview, and I'd gladly provide more information to members of the panel.
Any member? Councillor Ellis.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Thank you ever so much. There's a whole lot of overlap with making the town autism friendly as well. The sensory things that you mentioned. Can you tell me how many roughly the population have dementia? Like 1 in 100, 1 in 1,000?
I probably can't do that maths right now for you.
Roughly.
But I'll probably have to go back to the figures that I gave you actually. Sort of, we're talking in Nuneaton and Bedworth at the moment 1,660. I'm not quite sure, I can't quite recall what the population is of the borough. But I would say probably around about 2 or 3%, I would think. That's set to grow. The thing that we noticed about this, that I've learnt about this, is it's not just the people living with dementia, it's also very, very much about their carers, massively, and it's also very, very much about their friends and relatives. So if you take that, it magnifies the whole issue quite a bit, actually.
Related to that, with autism, there is diagnosed at the moment 1 in 100. Would very much like to work with the dementia Action Alliance. I've already been in talks with some of the stores and things like Asda.
Yeah.
Are you aware of the relaxed pantomime at Bedworth Civic Hall on the 3rd of December, which is aimed at dementia and autism, their families? Are you aware of that?
I wasn't personally aware of that, but I think that's a really good example of, you know, picking up on good stuff that's going on like that and trying to make sure that more people are aware of it. You know,
It would be great to kind of work together a little bit, because we're doing the same things.
I mean, that would be really, really welcomed. You know, I think absolutely, you know, totally support that. And yes, I'd be glad to kind of discuss outside about how, you know, you could be represented on the steering group and could work more together.
Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Chair. To echo Councillor Elliott's points, first of all, I want to commend the work that's being done and to thank the families and those individuals with dementia who are participating, because obviously they've got a lot going on in their lives. So to take time out to not only be part of this, but also because it'll help other people, is really commendable. I 2 points to make. First of all, I really want us to be a disability-friendly borough, a more disability-friendly borough, whether that's around autism or dementia or a range of disabilities. And actually, we as a borough council can make an impact on issues from planning. So when we build housing or we develop the town centre, we can think about how we can make architecture accessible. We can think about raising awareness and the services that we provide. So I would also like my colleagues as a committee to look at maybe us undertaking in future work around whether we can become a disability-friendly borough and looking at all of these issues in relation to the other committees in this authority. And what I wondered, Mike, one of the things that I've experienced in the workplace is the opportunity for senior officers, senior staff members and also board members, but in this case it would be local authority members, to actually experience what it's like to have dementia. And I wonder whether that was an opportunity that maybe you could arrange, or there might be that opportunity so that members can, that there are headsets and you can experience a kind of environment. But it would also be good for our staff to maybe experience that, because then we can develop our services within the authority so that when people come in or when there are issues, if people can really understand what it's like to have dementia, and I don't fully understand, I know some of it, but I think if we could experience that, and I know there are opportunities. And finally, in relation to, you said that there are 1,660 people currently within our borough. Do we know what the projected figure will be by 2025 for Nuneaton and Bedworth?
Yes, the projected figure is 2,200. Yeah. That's the projected estimate.
And what tends to be the age range of those with dementia?
The likelihood increases with age. It's not entirely an age related, but the majority of it is. And so from sort of the age sort of 60, 65 plus, then the risk of getting dementia sort of then starts to increase.
I just wondered, because obviously we've said 2025, but we've got an ageing population in Nuneaton and Bedworth, as other areas do, but we have a large number of older people that often are isolated. You know, we need to look at diets, we need to look at preventative measures as well. And I'm just thinking, is 2020, when's the peak going to be? So while we've spoken about 2025, I don't know, is 2030 or 2035 or, you know, because those numbers are high, but I expect they will increase.
I think they will. I mean, I've sort of read around this, you know, from the information that's put out from the Alzheimer's Society, which is, you know, it's extremely interesting when you start reading this. And they haven't actually kind of said that there will be a sort of a peak point where things then will then. They haven't actually mentioned that. I think what they're really, the thing that they're emphasising is that it is on the increase. One of the key messages is that there is a lot that can be done to reduce the risk of acquiring dementia in older age by adopting a healthier lifestyle. So I think that is a bit of a key message, that it's about preventing and raising awareness around that. And I think the figure of like sort of a 40% reduction you know, a big reduction like that could, you know, that kind of statistic, if people led a much more healthier lifestyle. So I think that's an important thing, that the seed could be sown about that now. But the other thing that really came through very powerfully was, you know, a lack of understanding from some quarters, and also impatience, lack of understanding from members of the public. And, you know, I think a big message coming from, you know, a more dementia-friendly society, it's an easy thing to say, but actually it means quite a lot, because if you have dementia, or, you know, and perhaps getting into the later stages of that, and you have a partner or relative, and you find that you're worried about going out, you know, into the public arena or whatever, and you become more and more enclosed within your own four walls. That's quite that's quite a big change to individuals' quality of lives. So I think actually really trying to make the borough more dementia friendly by trying to raise awareness, really pushing that boat out, actually could make a big difference to people living with dementia. People would feel safer and more supported generally, you know. So I think that's another key message, and the Alzheimer's Society do sort of push that, you know, they're pushing that message as well, really. And I certainly do take on your points that you've made about board members and people in sort of senior positions that are in a position to shape things, you know, and we'll look at that, we'll take that on board as part of the action plan to see what we can do around that. I think that's very important to get that sort of understanding and sign up. It was, you know, we did have Councillor Hancock who actually launched the event, you know, so it's really good to get sort of prominent sort of people, you know, into, you know, sort of working alongside and promoting this as well, you know. And we did have the police at the launch as well, as an example. And I think you're absolutely right. Once you start thinking about it, this can be embedded far more deeply in the workings of, you know, the council, but also a lot of other organisations. One thing that just struck me, you know, that sometimes, you know, you can unlearn things. You know, we learn so much about dementia as we go along, but then you find something happens where it becomes patently obvious that the lessons haven't been learnt. And I know I was at the cinema. There's a new cinema in at the Bermuda Triangle near Coventry. It's all been done out. It's lovely. It's really great. I went there to see a film with my wife, and all the toilets have been done out, smashing, you know, and all the cubicles, all brand new cubicles. But when you look at them, it's just like a complete wall, all the same colour. You can hardly see the handles. You know, obviously spent a fortune on this, you know. But to someone with dementia going in there, depending on the type of dementia they have, they would see all of that. They wouldn't be able to understand how to get in and out of that cubicle. You know, so it made me think, well, this is a lot of money has been spent on this. A lot of thought has gone into this, but they've missed out on the consequences for people living with dementia in the way that they design that. So I think, you know, what you are saying, Councillor, is very important about building this into the thinking of people that are designing things, the architecture, as you mentioned, and all of that, you know, so important.
Yeah, it's a massive issue, and the raw numbers look about 1.5%, but obviously people don't just suddenly one day have dementia. From the people I know who started to have problems and now look like they've got dementia, it was probably over 10 years of starting to forget things, starting to get a bit confused. So it's not a black and white, we have this many people. It is this many people have got it seriously, but actually there's been a decade of them starting to have symptoms. And a lot of the good work that's being done is trying to understand that early, and actually, yeah, a lot of research is going on now. So hopefully we won't get to an ever-increasing number. Hopefully in a decade or so there will be some good news coming out of it. On more local issues, obviously missing persons and people getting confused is something that's always, you know, they talk about protocols and actually preparing for someone to go missing. So actually, you've got a photograph of them and all this sort of stuff that actually then makes it easier if unfortunately someone does go missing. And the other aspect, from particularly the borough point of view, is things like our bus station, where we have got things which are really important for people going to the town and going back, actually making sure it isn't confusing. I mean, I get confused at our bus station. I'm sure if any of you get a bus, our bus station is confusing for people without dementia where on earth things go from. And actually trying to have experts have a look at it when we next repaint or refurbish to actually try and make it so it doesn't just help people with dementia, it actually helps everyone just know what to follow and how to cope with something as complicated.
Yeah, it's really interesting all the work that's being done, so that there's a lot of support being offered. But could you talk a little bit more about how the people that need the support, what vehicle is there for them to know that that's a dementia-friendly bank? You talked about a bank, you know, so because they're supposed to have stickers, are they? Dementia-friendly, to say it's a dementia-friendly
yes,
shop or...
that's right. Yes, they can. I think there are a lot of things. I mean, certainly when you get to the stage of diagnosis, then obviously the GP can provide a lot of information, and people are provided with a pack of information about things that are going on and so on and so forth. A lot of the feedback we got from the people that came along to the conference was, well, that is great, but at that time, you can't, when you get that diagnosis, can't really take anything in because you just, you're faced with what you've just heard and so on. And they were really saying to us, we need something that can come along a bit later on to actually, it's an ongoing sort of process, and you need that sort of contact and help as you go along. There is a Dementia Navigator service that is available for people, and that I think that's a really important development. So that that's open to everyone who's living with dementia, so they can contact the Dementia Navigators who can do a visit and know all of the services that are available and can actually do a bit of an assessment and help that person. We've had some good feedback about the Dementia Navigator service from people that we've spoken to. There is a great, I know it's a website, but it's full of, it's called the Living Well with Dementia website and portal, and it really is an excellent source of information, no matter who you are, for seeing what's going on and services and advice, whether you have dementia or whether you know someone that has dementia and so on. So there are those kind of things going on, and there is a thing called the Dementia Friends programme, which is actually a national thing, where it only takes about an hour, but it's a sort of an input from a Dementia Friends champion gives a talk to a group of people who want to become dementia friends, and in that hour they can get across some really useful information that will actually kind of almost like double your knowledge of what dementia is and how it impacts upon people and what you can do. So there is this Dementia Friends programme, and part of the work that the Alliance is doing, but also the county-wide Alliance, is to try and sort of create as many dementia friends as possible. We picked up on the fact that that's good, that's brilliant, but what people were saying at the conference was, we'd like you to target that at particular groups who could really, really do with that sort of training in particular. And that's one of the things we're trying to do. And things like, for example, transport providers, taxi drivers, for example. At our last meeting, Julianne, who is, I think she works in the licensing office here, has come up with some great ideas, sort of saying, well, if we want to get into the taxi drivers, I'm in a good position from where I sit to actually get information to them about coming on Dementia Friends training programmes, So, and that's really practical stuff that you're getting straight out there, and that's using, the people that work within the borough, within, sort of roles within the borough, So it's using our contacts, our knowledge, our expertise to actually make a difference there. Really. So there is a lot going on there, all those sort of things. I think one of the big things is also trying to, while there's a lot going on for people living with dementia, we have to make sure that we're also supporting the carers, because it can be, and very often is, I've learnt, a 24-hour, 7-day a week kind of, role, and a bit of respite for carers is really a very powerful thing. So they're kind of things. We do have some really good groups like Friday Friends, the Bermuda Phoenix Group and others that provide that respite. But what we need to do is help other community groups to provide even more of those kind of services as well.
Councillor Hancock.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It's clear that as a scrutiny panel we're all united in the aims of bringing this forward. And I thank Mike for his passion in what he's trying to do. However, having said all that, we can sit around these tables tonight and thank each other and say well done for trying to bring this forward. But as a scrutiny panel, it's our job to know what we're going to do about it to try and influence other people. We're not a decision-making body, but I think we should be putting things forward, certainly to the Cabinet about it. I believe there is already a commitment within the authority and some senior managers in becoming dementia friends, but there's a lot more to it. And as a local authority, we can help to spread that message. And the one important thing that Mike's touched on, well, there's lots of important things, but I think the most important thing, and I often say it about many different conditions, is about awareness. And, if we can give greater knowledge to people about a condition such as dementia, and there's lots of other things about as well, but we're talking about the Dementia Alliance here. So that awareness, and it's a fairly basic training thing I think that Mike was talking about, to become a dementia friend. But when you think, as a local authority, the contacts that we have through our communities department, things like that, with residents associations, tenants associations, neighbourhood watches, all of these people we can spread that message to, and I'm sure there's even people that will go into those groups and just talk to them about what they can do, because there is still a lack of awareness about dementia, and occasionally you'll maybe see somebody wander up the road with not many clothes on, or somebody in the pub or club that is acting differently to others, and it's not particularly what I would describe as a mental illness, it's dementia. They've got out of the house, they've gone to socialise, but then it can be the reaction of others because they don't understand that condition. And so, the awareness thing is a vital part of it. It was interesting with the police at the launch, because I think policing has been one of those things up until recent years where, again, they haven't had the knowledge of it. They're called out for some reason or for whatever, and the last thing you want is somebody that's maybe got dementia or something else is being put in a cell for 5 or 6 hours. And but the police now are starting to recognise more that you can have a mental health team on board and things like that. So the awareness is the thing. But what I wanted to say, Chair, really is, as a local authority, we've got a real opportunity here. We don't get many opportunities these days because of, lack of money and funds and stuff. And we've been front runners of many things over the years, like our sheltered housing schemes and things like that. But we can help to be the front runners here in not just Nuneaton and Bedworth, but Warwickshire as well, about this dementia awareness. And I don't think there's a cost to it as such, really, because as Mike's just explained, you can spread things through the different departments of the council, but you've got to have that drip fed into them departments in the first place. So I think if we're going to send a message to the Cabinet, it's that, within our internal training programmes, that we can include things like this into licensing, into housing, into planning, into all those different departments, so it all falls down into place, and that message can go out, and we can help in that way and pick things up. Because the scary thing as well for me, although it's been mentioned about the approximately 1,600 at the moment rising to 2,200. Let's remember, they're just the ones that we know about. I think Keith touched on that really, but they're just the ones we know about. That figure will be quite considerably higher, I would suggest. But I think we need to make sure the Cabinet know of the views that we've got here, particularly in that awareness programme for our staff and feeding out into the community. Thank you, Chair.
Can you formulate that to a recommendation?
Chair, we do have, we are Dementia Friends.
Yeah.
You've seen a lot of us have got the Dementia Friend button, and it was a programme that they brought in for all sort of frontline service and managers, and it, as Mike says, it was very useful and gave you a lot of insight into things that you would never have thought could be a problem. That was last year, and I don't know, I haven't heard of anything more recently than that. I don't know if they're updating it with staff or whether it's corporately being rolled out as part of corporate training, but I can certainly find out.
Well, I mean, that's kind of what I'm suggesting, Chair, is, you know, and I think whilst officers have done it, I don't think members were too aware of that, if at all. I only became aware of it at the launch, really. That some officers had done that, but I do think it should go. It shouldn't just stop at a particular level. It should be maybe you know, an annual part of whatever training staff are subject to. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Relating to the immediate comments, I would think that somewhere like training for the people who work on the front desk would be possibly it may to some extent happened already, given what Shirley's just said, but those are the people who are most likely in this building to come into contact with people with a degree of dementia, and being able, from the word go, to be able to support them, I think would be a good place possibly for us to start here, if it's not already being done.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's I think the front line, sort of, making that difference to people with dementia at that level is so important. And then I think following through though with the longer term stuff about the thinking, the architecture and so on, the longer term planning, the two-pronged approach is very useful. And I think we could also think about, what I will take away is whether there is an opportunity to link some, autism training into that programme as well. We'll think that one through as well, really, because that could be something that we could, move it forward with as well. That's another, thing we can think about definitely.
So can I suggest a recommendation to cabinets of dementia training to be put onto within the training programmes that we already offer, and also offered out to elected members?
Yeah. Chair, can I also add to that we could maybe look at strategic planning in relation to our strategy and policies, and how we can make or seek to make us more dementia friendly and also autism friendly. One final question that I've got is just, it's not been mentioned, and I know that the corporate OSP isn't now meeting, so I don't know whether it would have been more appropriate to mention it there, but seeing as you're here, in relation to universal credit, is there anything that we as local councillors should be aware of in relation to people with dementia and potential risks in relation to universal credit rollout within our borough? Because obviously...
I think perhaps the main thing I would say is that we're working very, very closely with Carver, who are doing a lot of work at the moment to sort of raise awareness about universal credit, how people can find out more information, where they can go for help. I think it would be very useful if you could actually sort of promote that message. So if any sort of queries come your sort of way around that, that is one useful thing to kind of say to people that are inquiring about that Carver is certainly one group to go to. We obviously citizens advice as well, but I was looking today at Carver's programme that they've sort of put together around that, and it's looking pretty good really, you know, so we'll be sort of working closely with them and keeping an eye on that and see how that sort of rolled out, because it's obviously gone live in Nuneaton and Bedworth very, very recently, you know.
Isabel, did I see you? Or did you change it?
I did.
Ingrid, sorry.
A while ago. Thank you, Chair. I just have a reminder really. I mean, you said to help improve dementia is to actually improve lifestyle. We have to remember that Nuneaton and Bedworth is a poorer area.
Yes, absolutely.
And therefore to actually just say to people you need to turn your lifestyle around is actually going to be quite difficult.
Yes.
So there has to be more awareness of that. So that's one thing. If companies want to open shops in Nuneaton and Bedworth, is there any way for Nuneaton and Bedworth councillors or the planning department to actually say, if you want to open a shop, cinema, whatever, bank, you have to make it dementia and autism friendly? Can there be any insistence from the council in that direction?
I'm looking at the chair
Question.
of planning because I'm not sure.
No, well, I'm not. I mean, just off the top of my head, I would think that would be a difficult thing to condition as a plan on a planning application. Whether it can be done through the licensing regime, depending on what sort of premises they are, but nevertheless, I think if there are premises, and again, it's something Cabinet can have a look at. If there are premises anyway, you know, there's nothing wrong with us at least putting a note within a contract. I wouldn't have thought, say we would prefer it if you could do this and that.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm not sure whether you could force people to do it, but
No, I think you
certainly
probably
suggest
could,
it.
but I think it would carry a lot of weight if it was coming from a very senior level, that this is something that we value and this is something that we would like to see. You know, if it's going to be a building in our borough, you know, within our borough that's serving the community, this is something we would hope to see. You know, so there can be that sort of weight of persuasion. But no, I think it's not something that can be enforced, but it can certainly be come across as something that we would highly desire. So, you know.
Well, Councillor Constable.
Yeah, just a quick point. If we're making recommendations to the Cabinet, it may be worth to explicitly say, can we have a recommendation to put a tick box or something to any new projects that we're doing, like when we refurbish the bus station or big projects like Abbey Street or Vickery Street, that we do actually have a dementia-friendly sort of audit on there. And yeah, we do a lot of good stuff as well, like the Walking for Health and things that do tie in, and yeah, we should actually pay credit to the people who are getting people active.
Yeah, just going back to the point about new businesses and planning, I don't think there's any way we can sort of force people to take it on. But if we had some sort of welcome pack and we carefully gathered all the information and let people clearly know that we're a dementia and autism friendly borough, and give them guidelines as to where they can get training, information, and support our efforts, that would be a start.
Yeah.
Councillor Margrave.
Just
Councillor Pompey.
very briefly, Chair, in relation to this issue around enforcement or obligations and how we can encourage businesses. Businesses, as do we, have a statutory obligation under the Equality Act 2010. And so I think that businesses aren't taking on their obligations, and I think across the country, whether it's local authorities or individuals, I think they don't fully understand their obligations in the Equality Act, but I think it's probably already in there, but it hasn't been challenged. And so we maybe need to look as an authority whether we can challenge it or whether we can support others to. But first of all, we need to encourage people to meet their obligations and remind them that there is the Equality Act and that all of their services need to be accessible and that they have duties under the Equality Act.
Yes, yeah, yes, absolutely. Everyone understands the equalities of disabled people and a ramp to give them access, but not so much with these sort of disabilities.
Councillor Pompey.
Thank
Chair. I mean, I'm not sure if this is, you know, a job that we as the council would do, but it strikes me that if we're talking about the, you know, people acknowledging the Disability Act and so on, where we're talking about chains and national stores, you know, go to the organ grinder, so to speak. You know, head office will be the place probably that will, you know, be encouraging people wherever they are. Now, what our role, or indeed perhaps your role might be in that, but it seems to me, you know, go to the top where you're talking about companies that will have, that may come to our town. And obviously you've got individual stores as well, but generally speaking, you know, go to the top of the company and ask what their disability support plans are, and get the awareness of the disability.
Yes. Good idea. I certainly do think the suggestion as well of a tick box on, you know, on papers, because it kind of just, if nothing else, it starts the mind thinking, doesn't it, about, well, what are the implications here for people with dementia, you know, and then, you know, and sometimes the briefest of checks can throw something up that probably wouldn't have been thought about, you know, so I think that's a very good suggestion.
Thank you very much, Mike. It's been really useful.
Thank you very much, Chair, for inviting me.
We'll make sure they're handed round.
Okay, I'll leave those. I can knock a few more off as well, actually, so I'll just drop those in. Thank you very much.
Make recommendations and go forward to cabinet. Item 7. Warwickshire's Children's Safeguarding Memorandum of Understanding.
Thank you, Chair. At the last OSP meeting, do you remember we took any other item from Councillor Longdon on the Memorandum of Understanding from the from the Health and Wellbeing Board, and it was about their relationship with the Warwickshire Safeguarding Children's Board. The members at that meeting said that it was didn't give them time really to consider the papers, or the paper that was presented to them, because they only got it that night. So they asked for it to be put back onto this this agenda, which because Rachel's not here, I had to sort of quickly do a covering report for it. So the Memorandum of Understanding is on page 17. What the members were asked was whether they wanted to support this Memorandum of Understanding and whether they would give any comments to Councillor Longdon to take back to the Health and Wellbeing Board. Now, he sent me an email because he couldn't be here tonight, he's at another meeting. So if I just read it through, and then I have a quick note from the safeguarding officer, and then obviously you can open it up for discussion and any comments we'll take back. So firstly, Councillor Longdon says, obviously sorry you can't attend tonight. The Memorandum of Understanding was referred to the OSP. He says it seems on the face of it to be innocuous. However, there was an instance on an insistence on haste, and that was, I think, what concerned him really. They were given it and told you've got to decide today, and I don't think he was prepared to do that because he thought maybe they were trying to push something through. When I asked, he says, why it was a Memorandum of Understanding rather than just a report that had come to the board, I was told it was because other agencies were involved. It wasn't just Warwickshire County Council. He says, given the track record of HiWeb, or Health and Wellbeing Board, where this has never been applied before, and the demand for the speedy response made me reluctant to agree anything at that time. And I said I would refer it to the Health OSP at Nuneaton for consideration. The recommendation on the report seeks for the Warwickshire Children's Safeguarding Board Memorandum of Understanding insofar as it relates to the Health and Wellbeing Board and its activities. He says, I have no problem with the safeguarding children. In my mind, it is an absolute priority, and it is essential that all agencies work together to ensure the maximum safety of our children. In the Memorandum of Understanding itself, it outlines the constitution of the Health and Wellbeing Board, and it proposes, although there is some drift on the purpose on the regular basis. Paragraph 2, development of strategy and direction between the Warwickshire Children's Safeguarding Board and the Health and Wellbeing Board appears to make sense, so he's quite happy with section 2, paragraph 2. Paragraphs 3 and 4 are just a process and therefore no problem. He says, I admit I may be overreacting because this is a memorandum of understanding and does represent a departure from the norm for us, but a great deal of mistrust exists between all partners on HighWeb, and frustrations boil up because of the way things are being dealt with, or not, as may be the case. I also do not want people trying to browbeat decisions out of me and make unrealistic demands for responses. Hopefully my suspicions are groundless and the OSP will give me something to take back to Warwickshire County Council. So Councillor Longden shared that and the Memorandum of Understanding with Craig. Craig is on the Warwickshire Safeguarding Children's Board, so he and his manager have looked at it, and so this is what they say. The Memorandum of Understanding between Warwickshire Safeguarding Children Board and the Health and Wellbeing Board. We have looked at this Memorandum of Understanding. The principle of the document is a commitment between the two boards to the development of a strategy and direction between the two boards, delivery and performance reporting between the two boards, and communication between the two boards. It was endorsed by the Warwickshire Safeguarding Children's Board back in May 2016. We cannot see any direct impact that this Memorandum of Understanding will have on the Nuneaton and Bedworth Borough Council. Safeguarding adults guidance for councillors. And this was something else that came up this week, and I think you'll be aware of. Members will shortly be in receipt of a safeguarding guidance produced by Warwickshire Safeguarding Adults Board. This guidance leaflet provides some context around the role of councillors in the safeguarding of adults and identifying the different signs, types of abuse. And members should be made aware that if there are any concerns about the welfare of an adult, they should contact Craig Dickin, who is the council safeguarding lead. So that's come from the safeguarding officer and so on. So reading what Barry said and what Craig is saying, I don't think, unless somebody else is reading something that they haven't seen, that there's anything concrete in this that would lead you to raise concern about it, but obviously that's entirely up to yourselves. Thank you, Chair.
So, thank you, Chair. First of all, I welcome Councillor Longden's candour. I think he has raised some points of concern, actually, and I think we should be rightly concerned. Now, I want to start by saying we should always think of safeguarding children first, and that has to be our priority. And a lot of the issues in here, I want us as a local authority to be fully committed to. But I want us to put the issues to one side and question really, first of all, I don't understand why it's a memorandum of understanding, what the purpose of it being a memorandum of understanding is, and what the intention of it is. Well, what it feels like to me as somebody who represents Nuneaton and lives in Nuneaton and Bedworth is that what we're doing is we're saying to Warwickshire, a Warwickshire-wide committee, we were almost suggesting that we would give more power to them or put the decision-making with them. And that takes away power and decision-making from local people. And so I want it to be really clear that I think a lot of these issues need to be considered by local members, local councillors here, local residents in Nuneaton and Bedworth. And I wouldn't like to sign up to this on the basis that we would further remove local people from having a say. Because we've already seen it with the STP, and I've got concerns that this is part of a wider move to move to a sort of Warwickshire Unitary Authority or a Warwickshire-wide structure, and that really damages Nuneaton and Bedworth. So I don't know why it needs to be a memorandum of understanding. I'm happy to support the objectives of the committee, and it is a county council committee, but I think we've also got to take our own responsibilities on board and to do the things that we've been charged with as well. So I wouldn't like to see any sort of delegated authorities given to this committee from this authority. And I really think for it to be a memorandum of understanding, it would have to go to full council, or at least be made by the cabinet member. So, with my reservations put forward, I think, hopefully the cabinet member can enlighten us a bit more in future. And he has my support in whatever he does.
Thanks, Chair. I agree with many of the comments that were made by Councillor Longton actually in that email, and on the face of it, it does seem like a fairly innocuous document. And actually, from a safeguarding point of view, agencies working together can only be a good thing. But it does concern me what he said about this insistence on haste and the fact that they wanted that decision the same day. So it's more a question really, but did he go back to them and ask for some clarity on what the rationale was behind
Well, my
them needing
understanding
that
was he
decision so
raised it
quickly?
at the meeting and asked why it was being rushed through, and there was no response.
So it doesn't, like looking at it, it doesn't seem like there's any reason why this couldn't have taken a few weeks to do so. Like why a decision had to be made that day. That's what's confusing me, I think.
And I think given that it was actually written in May last year.
Yeah, it just seems a bit odd that suddenly it's appeared from nowhere and they want a decision straight away. I can't understand why.
I'm very concerned with our portfolio holder getting what he thinks is ambushed or whatever, and I wasn't sure, at these meetings, do the portfolio holders take officers to help them? Because obviously a lot of these things are very legalistic, aren't they? It's all work, so you need almost to be a Philip Richardson type person to understand what's going on. So when we have a representative at the various boards, do we actually have someone sitting with them, like Philip Richardson, who can actually, or are they sort of all on their own? Because that is very concerning if we're not getting someone who understands, because legalistic jargon is difficult for a lot of people, and when it starts having more terminology that normal people just don't use in day-to-day life, you do need someone there to guide you through it to actually work out what am I actually signing up for. So I do think we need to strengthen our hand by actually insisting that documents are, if there's anything we need to sign up to, is provided a week ahead, and someone like Philip Richardson actually goes through with all the I's and D's dotted and things, and make sure we're not actually burning any bridges in terms of commenting or having input.
So perhaps if we could tell the public where you've got concerns over the haste of the document, the fact that it's a memorandum of understanding when we've never really gone that way before. I've got a little concern on Appendix 2, 3, 4, under 4, where it says about the needs assessment needed for pharmaceutical services when we're talking about a document in regard to children's safeguarding. That's just been sort of slipped in, so taking on Councillor Condicore's point about the legal aspects. I think there's some concerns there, and we would like more clarity around the document before there's any agreement to signing up to it, I think. Is everybody happy for that? Yeah. Yes, moving on to item 8, integrated performance report.
Right, so we're on page 18. I think you've all had handed out a little chart there. This came in after the performance report had been produced, but it gives you an idea of what we're going to be including in this performance report going forward. And as I say, Rachel would normally talk to this for you, but and I'm sure she will at the next meeting, Chair. I think the other things that the Chair has also agreed to come here if possible is we're going to try and get you the numbers of GP referrals and so on from the Leisure Trust and, not the Leisure Trust, SNM, the leisure providers and sports development and so on. And so they will also be included in future. If we look at page 19, freedom of information there, you will remember, or you may remember, included in this report now, as at the request of the Economic and Corporate Scrutiny Panel, in the summer they asked if all FOIs and complaints would be identified by department, those that are outstanding, so that you have a clearer view as to where those who are getting snarled up and so on. So that's included in this. Also the investigatory powers, we have to give members an update on that as to how many surveillances we've done, and as you can see there, we've had no surveillances this time. We move on to the risk register.
I know everybody's read this.
Chair, before we...
It's front page.
Sorry, I thought Shelley was going to give her report and then we were going to get... Just in relation to the format of reports. No, it's not the... Yes, the format of reports. So what we've got here, will we be getting trend information? Because obviously the figures on here are very worrying. So, for example, under 18 teenage conception rate is 25.4 per 1,000, which is hugely higher than Warwickshire and England. But what doesn't really matter is, it's significant what the figure was in 2015, but what I need to know is what the trend is. So where it's going to be going forward. So is that information going to be included too?
We will be able to put trend information on.
That'd be really helpful.
But we've got to bear in mind that, as with all health stuff, it's usually at least 2 years behind. So what the figure is on here isn't necessarily what's happening out there today.
So perhaps if we can ask Rachel if she can try and get some more up-to-date figures, because 3 years out of date is just too long.
Yeah.
This will be the up-to-date stuff that she's got available. That'll have come from the observatory.
One of the problems, Chair, with this performance data is this is the performance of our population, not the performance of our health service. So I do think we need some data on here about 4-hour waiting lists, cancer treatments, access to CAMS. I think we do need a few more things just to check that the things that we're supposed to be scrutinising and that we may actually have more influence over. Because although we'd like to be able to reduce the amount of teenage conceptions, that might be difficult for us. There is things we can do to help with it, but some of the things like the access to services is definitely things we need performance data for.
Obviously this performance data is a work in progress because it's something I brought in this year, so we're working on adding different things.
If we could have a few items on here about the performance of the health services in Nuneaton for our population.
The difficulty is, Councillor, is getting the information and where we get it from, because we can't force anybody outside to give us the information. We have to get it where we can, really.
But lots of it is regularly published by those organisations. It's just collecting it so we know how and if CAMS is getting better or worse, or the 4-hour waiting list is getting better or worse.
Yeah, we can look at that. So the risk register starts on page 21 and goes all the way to 32. Have you got any questions? Yeah, thanks, Councillor.
A big issue, and it's something the county council set a working group up on, particularly tied in with local plans, is provisions of GP services and things. And there's a new working group which I've managed to get on, because all the planning stuff is then leading to pressure on GPs and things. So we haven't got a local plan, and we haven't got proper funding to increase the number of GPs.
I think it's also a work programme item, isn't it? Can you ask me to go on a work programme item?
Yeah, it's also the county council's picking it up as well, so the two are related.
They're a joint working.
Send us your data.
Anybody else got anything on this register?
Shelley mentioned we have one red item.
Yes. The red item is the borough
plan.
No, I know, but I didn't know whether there was something you win it.
No, I wasn't going to say. I was just going to say there's only one red item, so hopefully nobody will have anything on any of the others. Obviously, if you have, let me know.
Just ask why this is in here. How does it relate to health? I'm confused.
It doesn't.
Oh.
These are the risk register goes to all the OSPs.
Okay.
The strategic stuff goes to all. So the rest of the report now is what goes to everybody. But obviously you'll start to fill up some of those pages with this other stuff as we move on. So then there was the FOIs and complaints that have been, no, it's a strategic report.
Performance report, page 33.
Page 33. And that shows you how the council as a whole is improving, declining, staying the same.
Chair, because this committee, the main purpose of this committee, I appreciate this has to come here, but one of the really important issues of this committee is to be externally facing. We need to look at GP surgeries, the local hospital, and the health economy. So I wonder whether it's possible for us, when we're considering a risk register, what we consider on our own, there might be other risk registers that could maybe come before us to give us some performance indicators. There would be data sets within those reports that we should maybe consider when we're thinking about risks. Because a lot of these risks are external, so whether it's A&E waiting times going up hugely, social services having issues, and some of these are county council issues, but we need to know borough-specific problems and be aware of them. So it might be useful when we get a report like this in future, just to know whether there might be an opportunity. I'm not putting anything forward, I'm just putting it out there, as it were.
We can ask. Depend on whether the external authorities would allow us to look at their risk registers. I have a feeling
unfortunately, we don't have a health officer anymore that would have done that work and collated that information.
That's the question, and see how many external organisations say yes, but I have a feeling you might want to keep that.
Depends whether it's on their website, I suppose. I think whether they have to publish it or not. So then there's the FOIs and complaints. I mean, really, this is information for you as councillors, not for you as health OSP members. It's more just for your information, so it keeps you abreast of what's going on. And finally, on this item, Chair, I hope you've all received, I emailed this out to everybody, which is the Warwickshire County Council Public Health Update for September. I haven't printed it off for everybody, but if you did, having had it by email, if you did want it, a hard copy, just let me know and I'll get one put in your trays. I'm hoping that we will get public health here fairly soon, but I thought that would tide you over for now, at least give you some information as to what they're up to.
On that point, we've got this very useful booklet from Public Health as well, which is about the annual report. So I think we do need to get a good going over the detail, particularly the Nuneaton Bedworth column being so red.
Yeah.
Well, we have requested that they
Yes.
pay before us, so we're just waiting for them to come back with the
Yeah.
dates are going to come before us.
And,
We need to have the health store update as well from them.
and it's also interesting this document doesn't contain the word dementia anywhere that I found.
If they ask about anything on the integrated performance report,
Yeah, just question or comment on page 39. It says that the CCTV number of incidents captures that lead to or assist in police arrests looks really high. 600 odd arrests. Is that correct? Am I reading that right? 559 arrests in June, or 559 incidents that led to arrests.
But
So year to date.
Cumulative.
It's cumulative.
Oh, I'm not
per
reading
month.
it right.
Not per month.
I thought it was really
So
high.
That's why it increases each one.
There's 30 odd in the month.
Right, okay.
It's still substantial though.
Yeah. And then the next one obviously is less than that. And it's only leads to arrests, not prosecutions. So
No, I do feel better that it's
Yeah, I'd just like to comment. I know it's not technically part of our work, but the standard of grounds maintenance, that includes the parks and open spaces that we're trying to get people to use as part of the health. And the performance of the contractor is falling quite a lot below what is the acceptable standard. Having walked in Riversley Park quite a lot, I use it. I tried to see what the specification was for the contractor on weeds, and because the riverbank is absolutely awful. You know, if you couldn't possibly walk on it. It's brambles and weeds. Really, just to comment, how is the performance of the contractor monitored? Because it is an external. It's Glendale, is it? It isn't our own. And are there penalty clauses in that contract if they're performing, 20% below the best of good performance? And I think we saw some figures sometime last year. It said that it's about the same, so they're not improving. It's just a comment that I wanted. I don't know what we can do about it but it's quite poor when we're trying to get children and families to use the open spaces. And I think Bedworth Park looks to me as if it's better kept. I don't know if it's the same contractor. It's much better than Riversley Park, much better. So, sorry.
no, that's all right. It's on there for us to scrutinise, and that's fine, just because it's a health committee.
do you want me to answer?
You can.
Glendale does all our contract, and it is monitored by the Planning and Environment OSP, and so the contractor comes in and has to answer questions from the panel. They do have to pay fines if they aren't performing to standard. Unfortunately, a lot of the time, obviously, it depends on the weather. Sometimes they have a bad summer, which makes it bad, and sometimes it's a bad winter that makes it bad. But the satisfaction is based on the number of cards that are returned from cards that are put through doors by the contractor, and also cards we send out asking whether the customers are satisfied with the grass cutting in their local area. But unfortunately, not many people return them. So it always, and those that do tend to be the ones that aren't satisfied. So I think last quarter, was something like 7 returned. So it really doesn't give you a very good.
And are the cards universal? Because I can't recall ever having a card asking me whether, because I'm not happy with, I'm talking about parks here, but not being happy with the verge outside our house. But
No. Well, I can't say. When you speak to parks and you speak to Glendale, yes, it's random. But I've never heard of anybody who's actually had one.
So we can put that in the report that if we've got concerns over the slippage on the grounds maintenance. Councillor Margaret.
Thank you, Kate. Just to pick up on this, I'll speak about the health of Glendale. The 2 points have been raised, CCTV and also Glendale. I agree about Glendale, and if you've got, or anybody else has got any other concerns about grass cutting or the quality of work undertaken, let one of your local councillors know, because I know that councillors around this room and across the authority have been logging complaints, and residents can phone up to log a complaint. I've got real concerns. When it comes to verges and some of the walkways and things, actually the county council's meant to do that, but we seem to be doing it for them. But Glendale has had significant problems, and we have been, as a local authority, really been taking up those. So if anybody's got any problems, report them to one of us or an officer, and just ring up the town hall, because it's really important that we get them logged and we get them sorted. And I know that, you know, I've often been out looking at, people have called me up to come and deal with those issues. And I agree that, you know, we need to, we've got some brilliant parks and facilities here in this borough, and you know, we need to keep on top of them and maintain them, because they are something that help local people with their health, but also really enjoyable, and they're somewhere nice to go. In relation to CCTV, I just wanted to note that while it's a shame that those incidents occur, equally it's fantastic testament that we've got the CCTV, and it'd only be wonderful if the Police and Crime Commissioner would contribute to the cost of it, because, you know, we as an authority, like all local authorities, are struggling, and it's something that we do as a local authority, and this proves how important it is for our towns.
Any other member? Councillor Comical.
Yeah, I mentioned Walking for Health. The parks and that are really important. Glendale get fined eventually if they don't. They have a rectification notice, so they have a chance to fix things before they get fined. If they eventually do get fined, it's £600. The contract is a £1.4 million contract, and then on top of that contract is piecework as well. So Glendale get paid roughly about £2 million a year, and they'll get 1 or 2 fines of £600 for poor performance. So it is a big issue that we haven't got the contract right, and we won't get it right until we get the new contract. And mentioning the Police and Crime Commissioner, I just forgot, on page 11 it does mention that Sam Margrave is now the Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner.
Was it really?
I very much want to congratulate him for that.
I think that has now been
Does Rob know?
Has it?
Page 11.
Well, I don't know what I find more concerning about that, really. Either that I would be a Conservative Police and Crime Commissioner, or that people think I'm Rob Tromans.
I don't know how that happened, but I did spot it the other day.
Thank you. Just wanted to maybe respond to the brambles at the around the river at the park, because I have queried that when I walked through the park. And the response that came back was that they deliberately leave the brambles and overgrowth at the river to stop the children running in after their balls and falling into the river. That they've said that that is a deliberate policy. I would like to
I'm sure there's
look
a more
further
attractive
into
way
that.
they could defer.
We can ask for clarification on that.
But to back Councillor Margrave up, if you do send an email to say there's too many stinging nettles over the bridge, they come out straight away, and they seem to disappear really quickly when you do that. Or we do it for you.
So let us know.
Yeah.
Move on to item 9, statement from Warwickshire County Council. There's another one, so there's always ASC, HOSC, and I have no update, unfortunately I couldn't make the meeting, I was quite ill, but I will ensure that there's an update at the next meeting in December. Item 10 we've done. Item 11, performance plan is for information. We move on to item 12, the WAVE programme. So we have an additional date for scrutiny to try and get through some of our rather large WAVE programme. It is December, I was looking for the date.
December the 7th.
December the 7th for our next meeting. It is December the 7th. So obviously on that one will be the health performance report, concerns for the priorities for Health Watch, Hesitation from Public Health at Borough County Council. That's the date we've been given by the MAP, we said we're going to make it. Annual report from Health and Wellbeing Board, the breastfeeding friendly service and the OSB to monitor the funding situation in regard to the health store. That means it might be rather a long meeting, but we need to get the different things. I have asked Shirley to move forward the JSNA and public health updates in terms of the public health on priorities for health in the coming year, because obviously if they set their budgets in February, we need to be able to input into that so we can get what we want for this borough. I think doing it in June is just a bit too late.
Chair, I wondered whether two issues. First of all, in relation to CAMS, I know that a number of parents are quite concerned. I didn't know whether, if we were having extra meetings, whether that was something that could be pushed forward at all. In relation to pharmacies, I wanted to also say that obviously there is a concern that significant numbers of pharmacies are going to close because of funding cuts. And I just wondered if in between now and that meeting, whether it might be possible for officers to send out any details if we're aware of any closures or potential closures. Because I am concerned that this is looming, and obviously we've spoken about it for a long time, but I have read online and in government magazines that these proposals are actually coming in now.
Everybody's happy with the work programme.
And sorry, the second to last one, the adult rural development services, should that be March 2018?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Was missed it through.
Two things. I mentioned look at GP provision, and we've now got the county council doing a piece of work on that. So hopefully that might actually generate something by March, May time that might then be more localised, because the county council does have access to a very large amount of data, and it'll filter down to looking at what needs to be done locally. And I also sent an email in about park runs, because we have got an issue. We had no park runs, and the park run then was set up, which was an informal one on Sundays, and they're now looking at supporting a formal one on a Saturday, and I would like us to not have any mess of going from 1 to 2 to then to 0, and actually have a bit of scrutiny as to what is going on, how we can support the park runs, how we don't lose the momentum from the one that's operating on a Sunday, and if ideally we could actually have a Saturday and a Sunday one in different parts of the borough. But I think we do need to get Kevin Hollis to get us up to date on what's going on and make sure that we have as much of this sort of activity as we can.
So can you put in a work programme item for me and detail, obviously, because we need to know what other detail you want to look at as well as Kevin.
But Chair, partly it was also Kevin telling us where we were, so I know what to put in as well. So
I just wondered, Chair, whether it was actually for this OSP or whether it was, given that it's parks and leisure, whether it was housing and communities.
I think if we're talking about written, I think it's really relevant to us.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're happy for it to stay here? We'll go to housing and communities.
I think
I
we
think
need
it
it
should
personally.
stay.
Yeah. Councillor Alice.
The CAMS was supposed to be this meeting, wasn't it? It's been put off to March 2018. And I'm just seeking assurance that it doesn't get delayed again, because it is really urgent with families now. There was a Nuneaton mum who's kind of gone viral online with her 86-week waiting list. And CAMS will say that their waiting lists are going down. That's because parents are being advised to go private and not even getting onto that 86-week waiting list. and children are being discharged from mental health and told to go and find a support group. They cannot find a support group. They come into our square peg, which is families, mums supporting each other. It isn't fixing severe health issues and disabilities. You would not say to somebody that's fallen down, broken their leg and needs stitches, and go and find a support group. Maybe they can patch you up. So there is absolutely no mental health parity. It's just a word that means nothing. The resources are just disappearing completely. I've got some horrible stories that just keep going on to our square peg group that are just heartbreaking. And I keep saying this, I keep bringing this to this and saying how distressing it is, and I've printed some off that I'm happy to share anonymously, because parents really do not want to be named, because they're being told that, well, if you can't manage your children, they will have to go into care. So they're being threatened. It really does need addressing. So I'd urge that the March 2018 is not delayed any further, please.
It was only March, Chair, because it was 12 months from the last
It's 12
time
months,
they
because they
visited.
only ever come to every
They
12
come
months.
once a year, so that was all.
Chair, just
So
to
that
raise,
won't change.
raise two very quick issues. First of all, is to echo those concerns. I've dealt with issues, and I've actually even been to an exclusion meeting with one pupil. My concern is that because the schools aren't getting the funding and the support, and children and parents are just being left, we're actually going to see children excluded from school, or their life chances diminished, because we know that at that point in life, that's when we need to invest everything in order to make sure children have got a bright future, and that's a healthy future too. So it is really important that we bring those in. In relation to one final item that I nearly forgot about, but I have spoken to you previously about, it isn't so much a work programme item, in that I don't think we need to put it on the agenda, but there is a consultation the NHS do have at the moment about charging for NHS services, and so I just wondered whether, if, with your permission, Chair, I might share that with Shirley, and it could be passed to committee members to have a say. But I'm very concerned that the government's proposing for people from abroad the charging of NHS services. The reason I'm concerned about that is not only the impact on people who are in this country, but also that it's a trend where we're going to see us start to be charged for certain services in the NHS, not necessarily GP surgeries, but all the other surgeries, and we see that in Ireland, we see that in other countries, and I don't want that here in England.
That would be to share the details of consultation, people to fill in at their leisure. I've got any other business. Next meeting is the December the 7th. Thank you very much for your time this evening.